So lesson 6.4 is going to be very similar to what we did in lesson 6.3 when we used the percent proportion. And that percent proportion is we put our percent over 100 and set it equal to our is over our of. All right, and then we still have our 3 ways to solve our proportion. 1, we want to look for mental math. 2, we want to look to reduce the fraction and then try mental math again. And if those 2 fail, 3, we can always cross multiply and divide. So I just have 4 examples here, just getting a little extra practice on setting our word sentence up into our percent proportion and then looking to solve. All right, so you'll notice that lesson 6.4 and lesson 6.3 are basically the exact same. All right, so let's just go ahead and begin. So I have 20% of 150 is what number? Okay, they told us 20%, so I'm gonna put 20 in place of my percent, so my top left. And because we're dealing with percents and proportions, percents are always out of 100, so I'm gonna always put 100 on the bottom of whatever percent I have. All right, it says of 150. It's telling me my of, and we do not know our is what number, okay? So we're gonna check for mental math. Is there anything I can do to 100 to get to 150? Not really, whole number wise, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna look to reduce, okay? So I have 20 and 100. Now there's a couple ways I can reduce that, but I know that since they both end in a 0, I can cancel a 0 out, which really I'm dividing by 10. 20 divided by 10 is 2, 100 divided by 10 is 10, okay? Now I could keep reducing to get to simplest form, but I'm going to look to try mental math again. So now I have 10. What can I do to 10 to get to 150? Well, I know I can take 10 times 15 to get to 150. So I'm going to take now my new number 2 times 15 to get my answer. 2 times 15 is 30. So 20% of 150 is 30. We found our is, right? Next example, I have 0.5 or a half percent of what number is 12. So I'm going to put my half percent over 100. Okay, we're not changing 100 at all right now, okay? We always put whatever I have for my percent over 100. So just so you know, it doesn't matter if my percent's under 1 or more than 100, we're still putting our percent number over 100, okay? Of what number, of, we don't know this time, is 12. Okay, now we're gonna go look to change this at this time, okay? We don't really like decimals involved in fractions, okay? We don't like them together at the same time. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get around that and change it a little bit, okay? I'm gonna move my place value 1 time to the right. So instead of a half, now I have 5. So I moved it once to the right, okay? So I'm gonna rewrite this over here to make it look nice. So I now have 5, but since I changed the value of the top number in this fraction, and since these are together, I gotta change the value in the bottom number, right? Since these are a ratio, I got to keep them consistent. So I need to, in this case, add a 0. So a half over 100 is the same thing as 5 over 1,000, okay? Now that's a little bit better to work with, okay? All right, so mental math, 5 to 12, can't really do anything, but now I'm gonna look for my second step and look to reduce this fraction, okay? 5 and 1,000, I'm gonna divide them both by 5, reduce them by 5. I now have 1, 5 goes into just this 10 2 times, and then I have 2 zeros. So 5 goes into 1,000 200 times. Now I can do mental math, okay? What can I do to 1 to get to 12? Well, I'm gonna multiply it by 12. So I'm also gonna take 200 times 12, right? And that's gonna get me my answer of 2,400. So even though I had a percent that was less than 1, I kept it the same right away when I set it up, and then I just converted it a little bit later while I moved my decimal, okay? Now, if I had to move my decimal 2 times in the percent, then you would add 2 zeros onto 100, okay? So on and so forth. Next example, what percent? In this case, we don't know our percent. Over 100, all right, of 300 is 51, okay? Check for mental math, all right? Now, I can't go from 100 to 300 on this side. We don't really want to worry about that because that's not the side of our fraction. Here I have 51 over 300. That's the side of my fraction. So I really want to ask myself, how do I get from 300 to 100? Now, we got to be careful on this. Usually with mental math, we multiply most of the time, but there is times where we do divide, and that is this case in this example. So what do I need to do to 300 to get to 100? Well, I need to divide it by 3. So I'm going to do the same thing to 51. 51 divided by 3 is 17. Okay. Now, if you weren't sure mentally on that, all you had to do is set it up long division. 3 goes into 5 once. And 3 goes into 21 7 times. So if you had to break it down, that's totally fine. Now, it did ask for what percent, so we have to give 17 the percent sign. Okay? All right, last one. 120% of what number is 102? So even though this is over 100, that doesn't mean I'm going to change the bottom number. Even though this is more than 100, that doesn't mean I'm going to change the bottom number to anything else. I always keep whatever percent I have out of 100. This number stays the same right away every time. So I'm going to put 120 over 100. It is okay to have more than 100%. Of what number, okay, I don't know my of, is 102. Okay? All right, so here, 120 to 102, can't really do mental math, but we want to look to reduce. And I have these zeros at the end again, so the nice thing to do is be able to cancel those last zeros off, which is really dividing by 10. Okay, so 120 divided by 10 is 12, and 100 divided by 10 is 100 divided by 10 is 10. Okay, so now I have 12 over 10 equals 102 over x. All right, so really still can't do mental math here, so I could still keep looking to reduce. Okay, reduce by 2. I have 6 over 5. So I have a new fraction, 6 over 5. Okay. Now, 6 over 5 equals 102 over x. Now there is a mental math number that I'm not really expecting you to know. We could multiply by 17 to get 6 times 17, 102, but I'm not really expecting you to know that. So if you look at this problem and see, all right, I'm not sure if I can do mental math, we can always go to step 3, right? And that's cross multiply 6 times x, which is 6x, and we set it equal to our other cross products, okay? 102 times 5. 10, 0, carry the 1, and 5, okay? So we just multiplied our cross products and set them equal to each other. So there's cross multiply. Now we just need to divide. To get x by itself, we're going to divide by 6. So I have 510 divided by 6. 6 goes into 51 8 times. 8 times 6 is 48. And 6 goes into 30 5 times. So 85, and it went into it perfectly. And it just asked for what number, so I'm just going to give 85. All right, so just continued practice on setting these word sentences into our percent proportion. Remember, percent over 100 equals is over of. Check for mental math first. If that's not available right away, look to reduce the fraction, then check for mental math again, right? If that still doesn't work, then you can always, like we did here in step, or our last example is cross multiply and then divide to get your variable by itself, all right? Homework is on page 236. We're gonna do 10 through 22.